Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of the Route to CISO podcast. This is part 2 with Amanda for now. Hopefully the first part sounded great. I know I was getting some echoes, but hopefully that didn't come across to you. And we've messed around with microphones and speakers and all sorts, and we don't seem to have an echo anymore. Amanda, sound good at your end?
Maybe. This is what you're going to ask me to check, but yes, everything sounds good.
Good. Okay. No, let's dive straight back in. When we were talking at the end of part 2 a whole week ago, it's been a long week. Yeah, we were talking about you. I think you were at Symantec.
Symantec, then Zurich.
Zurich, that's right.
Yes.
And you'd got together a whole team. You had an international team of people at Zurich. So that was your first official leadership position?
It was. I'm going to just let you know, I moved on quickly from there because the people I came in, moved on, and I was like, well, it was a little bit like this moment of being in Hunt for Red October. There's a moment in there whenever they board the two subs, and one of the Russian looks over and they say something about Scott Glenn's character, and basically El Buckaroo, he's like a cowboy. He thinks he's a cowboy because he's got a revolver on his hip or whatever. I was the only cowboy left, and I was by myself, and it was a lonely life. And so I was like, I feel like it's okay. And I'm going to just tell you right now, I made a mistake. I was super excited about being in this role, and I felt like somebody had finally seen me and dusted me off and taken me off the bench. And I was so excited that I felt seen, that I had this great ability, that I loved managing people. I was going to be great at it. And, but man, I was a little, the line between you're confident, but some people that rubs off as arrogant.
Right.
And this is when I first learned that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. And so I didn't get along with everybody. It was not the best environment. You could just kind of see that there was another person in this schema, like the Days of Our Lives, like the soap opera, that knew everybody at this company and knew all the right people and didn't like me. And so there was a lot of seeding doubt about my capabilities, that I was like, what? I don't have time for this. I'm just trying to secure stuff and things. So I didn't play the politics great because I felt like I shouldn't have to. My work speaks for itself. So and that's one of the first things you learn, is that no matter how above the politics you are, people are still political. Right. Period. You still got to do something. And you mentioned stakeholders before. It's it's an invaluable word. People need to take time to recognize the importance of that word. The stakeholders, they hold a stake. They care about something, and you may not care about the same thing, but you need to figure out what it is. So I learned that lesson, and at the same time, I had brought in a forensic tool. I don't know. Maybe I brought in Encase. I don't know. And they tried to sell me it, and I was like, no, you don't have to sell it. I know Encase really well. I'm just buying it. That's it. Yeah. And that was all I wanted to say about it. But they were like, oh, well, we're closing the invoice or whatever. It's fine if you're buying it, but can we still go out to dinner? I don't know. And I was like, sure, I guess. The CEO went to dinner. I happened to be in Chicago at the time, and then had a great time. He's a great guy. And I went home, and then about a month later, I got a call from somebody at Relativity, the CEO. Yeah. And, when you're at a position at Zurich, you get a lot of cold calls. You get, I bet. So this guy had dinner with the same CEO, and he called me and he told me about Relativity, and I was like, yeah, I know what Relativity is. It's an e-discovery tool. I might know a thing about e-discovery. Yeah. But I have 56 business units at Zurich. So unless you want to sell to 56 business units, this isn't going to go anywhere. And he goes, I don't want to sell it to you. I want you to be my security officer. And I was like, what? Boom, boom. It's a moment, right? Yeah. And when you're 37, 38, that's all you wanted to be, was a security officer. And it was so far at 35 and having twins. It was such a far away aspiration. to hear those words was really compelling. I was like, oh, I don't want to leave Zurich too early and, blah, blah, blah. But I took the call, and it turned out the reason we were connected was because he had dinner with that CEO of Guidance, and he was like, I just need somebody who loves security, understands maturing a program, but can also talk to customers, stakeholders, if you want,
Stakeholders. Yeah.
stakeholders. And yeah, so I that's how it got connected. And who knew that my entire career would go full circle back to my first job in this career, all because I had a good reputation when I left. I didn't burn any bridges when I left. And then whenever I brought that tool in to a job many years later, I took the dinner. I didn't need to go to dinner. I was already buying it,
Yeah.
but I was friendly. And to your thing you've said before about the relationship side of things, I was being relational.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about network. It's I get asked quite a lot from execs and various people in the industry, but especially sort of people at leadership positions that are making those decisions on what tools to buy, what software to buy. Um, I tell them like that network is absolutely key, and especially if you've bought a product from a company, they're going to want to hope that the next company you go into, you'll probably take them with you as well. So they've got a quid pro quo. There's a reason for that, but they're also really well connected. Like a good sales person is going out for those meals. They're building the relationships, and eventually, a few glasses of wine down the road, sometimes these things come out. People are less than happy where they are, or they're things they'd like to change, or they might be looking at other things, and all of a sudden, or they might need a new CSO, right? So those are the conversations that come out, and a lot of these roles get filled exactly that way.
Two things from that is such invaluable stuff. So I want to make sure we highlight it. But like,
Mm,
so one of them about that one, there's a lot of times in recruiting when people are like, oh, well, we can't afford that person. Let's not even reach out to them. You have no idea what that person's story is. And
yeah.
I don't mean to quote Michael Scott, who's quoting Wayne Gretzky, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So ask. You never know. Like I do work and get paid very little in terms of like university guidelines and stuff, but you know what, I love academia stuff, and so
Hmm.
I'm perfectly comfortable with that. There's also like pro bono work that I do for different organizations when they're like NGOs and stuff. Of course, yeah, happy to, because guess what, that happens to be one of my core values.
Yeah.
So you never know. You should always ask, because it's always, you never, it might happen. But this other thing I want to mention is going to be highly controversial. You ready? Let's
Here we
let's
go.
light the match. Let's light the match. I gotta tell you, if I could get somebody to filter out my LinkedIn messages from and my phone calls from the cold calls, and recognize that in this industry, if you don't know someone that I know and you weren't bought by someone that I know, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
That's just it. Like it's it. But if you do and are, and that's one of the reasons why those things like there's like a CISO network and stuff, it's so powerful.
Hmm.
Because if you think we aren't in a Slack channel asking, hey, what did you do when you moved out of the DLP realm, and what endpoint things are you doing for this, and what are you using for a SIM, or 100%. And we all weigh in, and sometimes it's a startup, sometimes it's a fat cat, been around a long time, sometimes it's whatever. But if you think we're not basing our decisions on that, you are mistaken. So just don't bother with the cold calls. Don't bother with the LinkedIn cold reach outs. It's never going to happen. This industry is just, I mean, maybe it does, and maybe that's why they do it. Because, what is the other thing from the Will Ferrell movie? 50% of the time it works every time.
Right.
So, so maybe it's working somewhere, and I just don't see that because I'm not in the sales realm. But I got to tell you, like the security space, we are locked down about that stuff. And it is invaluable what you said. Like, if you know somebody, and that's it. That's if I will take a call left and right if somebody has been, oh, you know this person? Got it. Let's have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, you need to connect with this person. I totally believe the same. And there's nothing worse than you must get those same messages I get where they name drop somebody and you're like, oh, okay. Well, thank you for name dropping them. Did they tell you that you should reach out? And then you like to get, they wait ages for a reply and you get this. No, I just saw that we were connected. And I was like, no way. Okay. Well, how do you know that person? Nothing. Like, if they even
Yep.
bother to reply, it's like, oh, Yeah, I met them through LinkedIn, and then like, oh, it's great because I've messaged them to ask if they know you. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
I
And
hope
we
this
call
goes
the
well.
bluff. Yeah, we
Yeah.
call the bluff. I actually had somebody who connected with me about the conference that I had gone to, sent me a message and was like, I went to an amazing session there, by the way. I went to a couple
This was the B
sessions that
sides one this
it
week,
was,
yeah?
yeah. There
Yeah.
were a couple that I was like, I don't know. I got really great value out of it, but not for what the intention of the talk was. But one of them I went to was amazing. And this woman was, we walked in late. And so we like just sat wherever there were two seats, but it turns out wherever you sat was a team basically in a tabletop. And she was going through an actual incident that she had done recently. And we happened to sit in the SecOps, not the executive team. And I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. So they go through it. It's clearly going to move into a ransomware situation. And it did. And as soon as the ransomware thing pops up, I said, shoot the hostage. Like that was my claim. So anyway, somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn from it, was like, hey, I was in the session, thought it was funny. A lot of my content's a joke, right? I'm just joking around. Um, Otherwise, I'm going to lecture. So it's like, those are the two options I have. Do you want me to tell you everything you want to know about this topic in digital forensics, or do you want me to just make a joke and move on? Most of the time I do that. He reached out and he said, and just as a heads up, I'm a CIO at this place. I'm not reaching out to sell you anything, but if you'd like to talk about your extended car warranty, I added him immediately. I was like, I love it. And it is so true. And I'm so tired of those messages because it's the connection. So, what a wonderful, delightful sense of humor to find.
Yes, you need that. I think that's part of, well, that's the stuff we talked about before, right? Getting your personality across is how you connect with people. And I think there's a great example of it. Sounds like somebody I need to know, actually. So there we
I'll
go.
send you, it was funny. They were
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah.
Introduce me. And then you could be like, no, I don't know, Chris. I don't
I
know why he said
know.
he, yeah, I don't know why he said that. You have no
Yeah.
idea.
This guy, he's got hamsters for his internet wheel. Like, I
Yeah, he's got
don't
like the slowest internet you've ever seen before. I think he lives out in the desert. Like when he
know.
says he lives in Vegas, he actually means the actual desert. He's out in the desert somewhere.
And we're so judgmental of security and IT, right? All of a sudden, the first half of the podcast is me trying to troubleshoot your internet. Like, okay,
Have
have
you
you
tried
tried
this?
turning it off and on again?
Yeah. Great. I'm like turning off every router, every part of my mesh system,
All of it.
unplugging
It's like we're in the
stuff.
Millennium Falcon. We're moving all the buttons everywhere. But yeah. So I guess to wrap that, I will say I hope that that's the biggest takeaway is that man, I made a mistake. It was my first role. It's all about who you know, but once you get in the role, it's all about who you continue to know. And
Right.
I didn't do a great job because I thought my expertise would speak for itself. And then
Hmm.
you learn that valuable lesson that your personality isn't right for everyone.
Yeah. And this was at Relativity, or this was still you're still talking about Zurich?
Zurich, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that catapulted me to take the job at
Right.
Relativity. But yeah, and then Relativity, I went to the dark side, as they say. I went to a startup
Hmm.
that was a product company. You know, we
Hmm.
were in what an amazing time. I went to an e-discovery company that was moving from on-prem to in the cloud. So at this point, you're looking at like 2018 and I have to convince the legal tech industry that our security is the best security that you can't afford and that you should be comfortable in our cloud. Now, think about the cloud maturation in 2018. It's painful. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, this was and that CEO and founder was right. He needed somebody who could put in an amazing program and talk to customers because I had to do both. And at the time, there were two people. Talk about two hamsters in a wheel, right? So there's two people who were running the security at that point. Um, but yeah, the only thing he asked me whenever I had gone through and kicked all the tires at the end of it, he called me and said, "So what did you think?" And I said, "I think you got a problem. Like you got, I don't know, that's going to take a lot of work. Like I don't know." I think I actually quoted Braveheart. I do a lot of movie quotes, and I think I
You're
said like
great with these quotes.
yeah, and I think it was actually that moment whenever the Irish guy looks at him and he was like, "The Lord tells me, like, I'm fine, but you're screwed," kind of thing. So I told him I was like, "Look, you got a lot of stuff going on there, man." And he was like, "Well, what would you need to make this like, I don't know, NSA level or whatever?" And I was like, Psh, "A blank check and for you not to micromanage me." And he was like, "Draw it up." I was like, gasp, clutch my pearls, like, oh my God. So not only did you only ever want to be a CISO, your whole career in security, that's all you ever want to do. You want to make the decisions, you want to call the shots, you want to make
Yeah.
change, you want to do great things, you want to secure things. And that's just me talking about being a mom. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So like that's
You'd
all
already
you
done
want to do.
that. That was all the
Yeah, I
experience you had already. That was your
still
side hustle.
just want to secure like the kids, putting like all the like bubble wrap around all the sharp edges, right? But like, so you want to do this, but then also to be told that you could build the program of your dreams with a
Yeah.
blank check. Stop it. This was like a salivating moment. So I did, again, the other key takeaway in this entire conversations that we have is got it in writing. It's like, this is how much I'll come into Chicago for travel. This is what my expectations of the role are. I was very clear. And that's the best thing you can do is what are the clear expectations of what the role is? So I went in and I took the job, and 5 years of my life at Relativity, and it was the most formative, important, foundational years as a CISO, as an executive, and as a human being.
Mhm.
Unbelievable, life-changing, life-altering experience.
And how do you feel? Because I see the move from for people going into products and becoming CISOs at product companies. I'm seeing a lot more of that happen now.
Mm.
And I see some people like they weren't planning to do it, and then again they get offered this kind of opportunity that seems so great, and so they jump in and do that. How did you find that? And also the other part with when working for a product company, the nervousness for a lot of people is around like, am all of a sudden am I getting sort of having to do revenue numbers, or am I, that part which isn't what most CISOs want to do. So did you end up going down that route? Yeah, tell me about it.
What a great question, because it's true. It was a really big acclamation to have to be that person in a room that people were expecting I was selling. And
Right.
there's a like almost a disparaging tone when we use
Mm.
the term field CISO, by the way.
Yes.
So
Yep.
like you're only if you're not a field CISO, by the way. Like if you're a field CISO, you're like, yeah, this is what I do. But there had to be a term that came about that I'm basically the sales face to speak to the people to get your product sold because I understand their language and I understand revenue, right?
Yep.
So this field CISO role came about, and this was before then. So 2018 was kind of like before it became really well known.
Yeah.
But I will say it felt really awkward for the first like year because I had just come off of being a VP at a Fortune company. So when I walked into a room, you best hold my beer. Like, I mean, again, that confidence versus arrogance, right? So it was weird to come in and people to treat me like, I was a
Like the
vendor. Like,
pariah. Oh my
yeah. And I was
goodness.
like, yeah. And you're like, you look at them and you're like, sorry, I just be clear. I don't care if you buy the product. I'm not tied to revenue. So let me be clear. My role was not tied to revenue.
Yep.
However, however, which is liberating. And I almost feel
Yes.
like you should ask that in a conversation if you really want to know if the person's motivation, like, was your role tied to revenue? So, in the fact that I was an executive at a company and I had equity, sure, there's something, but I was 38. I don't know that I knew what that meant. And this was my first executive role. So I didn't really understand or care. This was all monopoly money to me,
Hmm.
this thing that could potentially pay off someday. So I will say that, yes, this was awkward. It was a little uncomfortable. But eventually, I found that again, my authenticity, my personality really pushed things through, and like that was what people connected to. And I also would walk away if I was like, this is not the right fit for you. We are not going to be. There was a FedRAMP impact level that a customer needed, and they needed us to do a specific thing about, and this is where it's helpful to be technical. They needed us to do something specifically with the impact level they needed, which was extremely high.
Hmm.
And I happened to know the code well enough to know that it was going to take me like 30 million lines of code to fix it, to go back into the tree of code all the way to the beginning. And I was like, nope, it's never going to happen. It's like, it's just not worth it for us to completely reprogram and recode everything that this product does in its entirety just for you. You're never going to, you're not, you're not Walmart, you're not Microsoft, you're not
Right.
the DoD, like you're not, it's just not. Um, and also it's just not, I'm not going to move all of our resources of our company and pivot that way. So the revenue experience was awkward in the beginning because I wasn't directly tied to it, but I did care for the success of the company because
Yeah.
one of our core values was think like an owner. And that was pivotal and it is still today. But the other side of this that you mentioned is just the experience of getting to understand budgeting, revenue, strategy. It was immeasurable. And I learned that we would increase revenue by 30% year over year, specifically because of security. And I ended up tying our success as a company to security, which is one of my biggest advice that I'll give to people.
Yeah.
If you can tie the revenue to security. So I started checking how many times a customer required the certifications that we had in compliance, or how many times a customer would send in a pre-sales questionnaire that we only had those things like an Intel feed because I had put it in. And it was like 100% of the time. So at the end of when I did my performance reviews, which I mean, nobody cares about those at that level, by the way. Performance reviews isn't exactly like you're doing a great job, keep doing it. But I will say that it was like one of the most important things, tie the role of security to revenue and you will be made. And it was great. And we got everything we ever needed and budget was always great and improved. And because they saw it and it just became a self-fulfilling machine.
Yeah, now that's a struggle that I see a lot of CISOs with, right? They're always a cost center, and while you're a cost center, you run really lean, you struggle to get the things you need, and trying to show where you help the business achieve its goals. That's kind of a secret, right? I think that's one of the attributes, and we'll talk about attributes of CISOs in a bit, but I feel like some of the most successful CISOs are able to tie that stuff in.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. And I hope that's something that people will listen to for sure. Like, I hope, I mean, like, look, a Route to CISO podcast is a lot of people are listening because they want to understand how do I become a CISO? Like, what do I go into? How do I do this or whatever? And if anything, I'll just tell you all the mistakes I made, right? So, like, this was one of the one times that I made a risk and it paid off. I went to a startup. You mentioned a lot of people are going to a startup. That's true.
Yeah.
They are. And there's a reason why. There is a place of innovation and creativity and trying things. I got to tell you, as one example, I told them I wouldn't present at anything until the things I needed in place were in place because I wouldn't feel confident about what I was selling, if you will, about the security of a program.
Yeah.
And one of them was the firewalls that I wanted in place and some next gen firewalls. Nothing to be named specifically by vendor, but you can guess.
Yeah.
They're pretty big. And it and like
Wait,
another
I was gonna
place
say,
that
wait, maybe we should mention them, and then I'll bleep it out unless they promise to sponsor us. Maybe that's the
also
secret
it's
here.
Palo
Ah, okay, yeah,
Alto.
brilliant. Right, I'm gonna get on them. Do you want to sponsor this?
Well, and there, so it was just such a great move. But I will say that, like, I said, look, I'm not going to speak at this event in London in a month because we don't have these firewalls in place or whatever that I need in place for me to feel confident about this or whatever. The firewalls were shipped out and in place within 2 weeks. Stop it.
Wow.
Stop it.
Okay.
Like, I was like, what? So, and I remember when they called me, they're like, yeah, they're in Poland, they're here, they're wherever. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to London. Like, let's go. But yeah,
Yeah.
so when you get that speed of innovation, yeah, it's addictive. You love it.
And so you were there for 5 years. It sounded like you were very happy. Lots. What made you decide to make a step away?
Okay. Okay. It is another movie quote. So, um, there is a movie called What Dreams May Come. It's with Robin Williams in it. And there's this, it's a lot of like this long story, but at the very end of it, like, what do you do when you get to the very end of having a life that was great and fulfilling or whatever? And essentially the answer was, you do it all again. So I got to the end of the cycle of everything. And what happens when you build something amazing is eventually you get to a point of efficiency.
Hmm.
And I got great at that. And that's a cycle. There's builders, there's efficiency people, there's, anything in these buckets.
Yeah.
But I really love the build and I love creating and having a challenge that to sink my teeth into. So at the end of it, I was like, every day was very different 5 years later than what it started as. In the beginning, it was like I'd fly into Chicago and we're whiteboarding and arguing with engineering about the way we need to do this in the software cycle and stuff like that. I was like, this is awesome. I love it, right? 5 years later, I was on endless like executive calls about the revenue. And I was like,
Right.
like, so I was so far from what I had come in to do that I was like, I want to go do this again. I want to build it somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And so, does that bring us up to where to prove? Not yet.
No, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
prove.
Good.
Yes, 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 prove. And I will say that CISOs rarely go somewhere without the guidance and the know-how and the connections. So somebody introduced me and said this might be a good company fit for you. And they were related to like Sequoia and Oak and related somehow with like my CEO that I worked for. That's the other thing I'll tell you. I worked for a founder CEO at Relativity for a couple years, and then the next couple years I worked for a man named Mike Gamson, who had taken LinkedIn public and like the sales cycle and the sales position there. The difference between working for a CEO founder and then working for a very polished person was a quick change for me, and I learned very different skill sets, and they were both crazy awesome. But I was very upfront. I always had that really great connection with working for a
Hmm.
CEO, which we can talk all about who a CISO should report to because that's
Yeah.
important. And it's argumentative, and we can just start to arm wrestle about it. But he and I was very transparent. I was like, I feel like my energy, like I want to go build something again. So he helped me to look for a role. And so he connected me with somebody who connected me with somebody, and that's where I got introduced to Prove. And whenever I found out what they were doing, and I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. You have a bunch of data that's all about like cell phones and carrier data and pre-fill kind of information and stuff like that. I was like, oh my God, if you're not attacked yet, you will be. Oh, I was like, I would love to protect that. So I couldn't walk away from the idea of it. So yeah, I went into there, and this was the place to come in and put in a program and start with that building.
Brilliant. Well, you mentioned a few things that we should definitely talk about. We've not got a whole bunch of time, so I'll have to fly through them a little
Okay.
bit. First of all, you mentioned reporting structure. I have my own thoughts on that, but I'm interested to hear what your thoughts on the ideal reporting structure.
I don't care anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting, I used to care, and I think I went through this whole hurrah of like, well, you won't get security sold unless you work for the CEO, and it shows the importance of it, and it shows the commitment for leadership of it and stuff like that. And now I don't care. Now I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I don't need that. And I think there's a question you have to ask yourself, because if you report into the CEO, you're going to spend a significant amount of your time on those revenue calls. And you're going to spend a significant amount of your time on those business growth things that aren't, and you have to walk into a call taking off your security hat and putting on your executive hat.
Hmm.
And if you enjoy that, then you should report to the CEO. But if you just want to secure stuff and things, I don't know that that's the right move. So I think you just have to ask what you're looking for. And I'm always a big fan of like, write it out. What are the things you absolutely need and want in your next role that fulfill you and that give you energy? And what do you hate? I don't know if I'm giving your advice away now as a recruitment side.
I'm a believer. I don't think it really matters, and I'm going to probably get some grief for this, but I've spoke to so many different people about this, and I feel like most of it is driven from personal past traumas of who the person they worked for. So it wasn't whether the CTO was the right person in a title to report to. It was that the CTO wasn't a very good person to report to and didn't believe in security, right? They weren't going to back you. And then
Yeah.
you can get the same person in a CFO or a COO or a chief legal officer or even a CEO, right? And I think it's more about the person and their personality and the connection you've got to them and their belief and understanding of security than it is about their job title. So,
There is there it does send a message always, whether we say it or not, though. So
hmm,
if I'm a security officer that reports into a CFO, it sends a message. It doesn't matter
right.
what it is. I could be in charge of HR. And if HR reports into a CFO, it sends a message that what matters the most? The money. And okay, but if a CHRO or a CPO, chief people officer, if they report into a CEO, and you say you're a talent first organization, okay, that makes sense. That would make sense. But yeah, I think it does send a message 100%, but it is about the person and their experience. And I don't care anymore. Like I'm gonna get the things I get done regardless.
That's a great way to and so then let's flip it the other way then. Is and because I love to talk about attributes of successful CISOs, then like the ability to be able to report into anybody and still get I don't know what we would call that attribute, but the ability, whether it's connection or
I can tell you what
communication
it's
or
called.
something. Yeah.
No, no, it's bad actually. It's called cocktail waitress syndrome. It's a serial killer trait.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I feel like we're
No,
going back to Patricia Cornwell and the body
we are.
farm. You're getting back to your original forensics,
I
which
did, I
we talked
did.
about in part one, in
No
take
one
one, that
knows
you
about
never
that.
heard.
The
Yeah.
bodies are buried and no one knows where. Okay, part one will never be seen. But yes, I did work on the body farm. I did work a lot in forensics, but there was a lot of profiling that took place. And you do have to profile. You have to profile bones, you have to profile people, you have to profile all the time. And there is this thing, and the best person who's a great example of it was Ted Bundy. And
Hmm.
it is a cocktail waitress syndrome, which means that serial killers are great at it, but human beings to some level are all able to do it. We assess the situation, we have emotional intelligence to understand what's motivating the other person, what they're seeking, what they don't respond well to. Like it's all the things and putting them together. And so the ability to get things done regardless of who you report into means that you're probably really good at EQ. That's what that means. But yes, it's also an interesting trait.
And what other traits do you think, or even what other CISOs, if you look at people in the business here that you respect or you think are doing a great job, what kind of other attributes do those people have? And you can absolutely name check them, by the way.
I was going to say, you've mentioned this in other podcasts, like you've asked people like ones that they, hold, et cetera. So I will absolutely do that. I'm going to take that opportunity. And I think it's funny because people name drop different people that they've admired, right? And
Hmm.
so like they'll say, and I think on like the B-sides NOLA thing, somebody said something, they were like, oh, Bruce Schneier,
Hmm.
cryptography and stuff like that. And it's funny because that just doesn't land in this generation. Like they're like, who's that? Like, I don't know. Digital Fortress, what book is this? Like, I don't know.
Right.
They don't know this stuff. And they shouldn't have to. You don't have to have read or been through my experience to appreciate and love cybersecurity. Not the same.
Hmm.
So I don't have, everyone can be who they are and come at it from where they want to come at it. People that I've loved the attributes. I have learned this is really interesting, but I'm part of a group of people that does like a conference for free. It's called CyberCon. And it's a cybersecurity conference in Chicago. Look, I've never lived in Chicago, but man, do I love Chicago. Back when Twitter was a thing, my handle was Shy from Afar. It's a homonym. So, but like love Chicago. And so I still am involved with this. And I realized whenever I've been on calls for this group, it's all a group of CISOs who are just trying to give that opportunity to people who are trying to get into cyber and stuff and to speak and to be around this great warm environment, not like the DEF CON, like none of this like black hat kind of dynamic of like we're going to heckle or anything like that. It's none at
Yeah.
all. It's very positive. These people that are on the board and that I've worked with, one of them was the person I followed to Zurich. And he was the CISO there. He moved on to Motorola Solutions. He's at StoneX now. His name is Troy Mattern.
Hmm.
This was the guy who was like the Emperor Palpatine in Vader. Like he's so tall, he's like 6'6", but was in the Marines, so I was going to enjoy working for him.
Yeah.
And was the one who also told me like, what are you doing? Whatever, like what I was wearing. And he was like, we didn't hire you to be more of those people. We hired you to be yourself.
Yeah.
Just awesome advice. And to this day is one of the just most authentic, you would follow him into battle kind of people. And so one of those attributes I would say that I would put to him was the authenticity is the thing that was galvanizing for his people. Everyone would follow him into battle. To this day, anyone who works for that man, I guarantee you, would feel the same way. It is 15 years later, and I still like lean forward when he talks. Like it's just a captivating, like he's just real and he's got that vision and mission and he believes in it and you want to believe it. And I love that.
That's it's I feel like the best the best CISOs do have that ability to just and whether it's like get their mission across, get people believing in them, but also that is it charisma? I don't know what like, but there's just that buy-in. I'm not sure what words we can use to describe it, but
It's galvanizing is according to the six geniuses, the new, the five dysfunction of a team, right? So then that guy, Peter Lansoni or whatever, he came out
okay,
with it's the new thing in the Valley, by the way. Every startup in tech right now loves the six geniuses or whatever, six working geniuses. And one of them is galvanizing. And it is about, can you get a group of people to do a thing and do it because they believe in it, not because you told them.
and how do people build that kind of attribute? Like, how's that something you can work on?
Well, I think the best thing would be you can take that test and assessment to find out which ones you have and which ones you're like allergic to, right? I happen to have that as one of my two. As a matter of fact, a lot of women leaders do. So that's like
Hmm.
your first thing. Um, my other one is like discerning, like as I love to tear things apart and like figure it out. By the way, that can come across as interrogative. I've learned that. Like, so I've learned to like tone down my question stance and be like, and so what would you say you do here? Like, I'm a little bit nicer about it. Um, but yeah, so I think the first thing is to understand, do you have it or not? That's the first question.
Yeah.
And if you naturally have it, then you can develop it differently. Like it's a
Hmm.
small jump to develop it more and hone it. But if you definitely don't have it, I have no idea. I actually have no idea because I have that. And that's one of my things. I also don't know how to do some of the other things. And so I just can't, I don't even pretend to. I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't have that. So you know what I do? I hire somebody who
Right.
works with me who has that skill. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna hide that. I guess as a leader, though, for the galvanizing part, you've probably got to be the person, right? Because if not, if you're hiring somebody in to do that, they're not following you, they're following that person, and I don't know whether that's a good long-term bet for a CISO.
It
I don't.
depends because I
Yeah.
have an operating mechanism I take with me for the last like 15 years. Same two people come with me.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
got like a chief of staff and I got like a cyber architect and we just hang out together and
Yeah.
everyone knows that this is how our mechanism works because she challenges the hell out of me and it's a healthy pushback, which is going to be another attribute the ability to appreciate the healthy pushback. I'm not saying be disrespectful because that's the first thing I'll tell you not to do. Like, and I will tear someone apart if they're disrespectful to me in a large setting or not. And I will do it in a very professional capacity, but I will make sure we set the tone. Hold my beer. Please don't talk that way. Like, there's a reason I'm in this role and you're not. You're not making the decision. Here's a rapid decision framework. Here's what this means. And I'm the D, not you. Like, I'm real quick to clarify that. However, you should have the ability to have a healthy like pushback in front of people and handle it well
Hmm.
because it will create a space that tells people they can bring to you conflict and that they can bring to you a creative idea, an invention or whatever. So I love crazy ideas and I love for people to bring something to me. They're like, hey, I know this sounds stupid, but I think we could probably bypass blah, blah, blah if we did this and reroute them or whatever. And I'm like, all right, I don't know. I don't think it'll work, but we should give it a shot. And
Right.
like, I think you need to give that space. And I think
Yeah.
that's really helpful.
Yeah. The ability to be open and and be open to other ideas. Um, that's such a powerful attribute and a powerful tool because it's very hard to sort of lead people that feel like they just have to do, they have to do what you say, and if they've got an idea, they're too frightened to bring it up. That's I have seen people, especially people in their first CISO roles, where it's almost like the power goes to their head and the ego all of a sudden comes out. And then I've actually seen people get through that. I've seen them in that way. And then, I've been doing this for 12, 13 years. And now I've seen them come out of that and get a bit wiser and be a very different type of CISO. But it is, yeah, that's interesting, an interesting attribute.
They say that, whenever people say the terms like feedback is a gift, right? It's kind of like one of those things that people say, like world peace, that term has lost its meaning. It's been overutilized so much, right? So feedback is a gift has been said so much that nobody actually believes that anymore, and they don't really know or think about it, right? I have seen people when they go and you take a chance on them and put them in a management role. They're an IC, they're an amazing IC, they're really serious about management. They really want to do it. They believe in people, which is like one of my core things. You got to care about the people. It's like 50% people, 50% process, and I figure results will come. And if I have to be challenged, I would say 80% people, 20%, process, and the results will come. So I've seen people when you put them in this role, and we take a lot of chances in exec roles. We take chances on people. That pays off 50-50. Half the people get into their first manager role and their first leadership, their first CISO, but first manager role even. And the power goes to their head, the power of having 4 direct reports. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I went from like 2 to 200 and then less. And it's just, I've learned there is a carrying capacity.
Yeah.
I'm really great for 50 people. More than that, my efficacy is lessened because I like to do like skip levels and keep very straight and connected with people. And it's hard to do and manage with being with your job full time and doing all the skip levels when it's more than 50. I don't know. I can't do it. But anyway, my point is that I've seen the power go to people's head and it's painful. And I just said this to somebody this week as advice because we're doing like a 360 on them. And I said, I don't think you realize that this is going to be life altering for you. You can choose to listen to the input that's going to come to you, or you can choose to dismiss it and say everybody's wrong. And you can completely do that. But at the very least, I need you to fake it. I need you to at least smile and nod when someone gives you feedback as opposed to getting defensive. Because I
Yes.
had to do that and I had to learn that. And then eventually it started to get through. And I said, you may not do the work today that you're going to get about the feedback. You might not do it for a year or 3 years. I don't know. It took me a couple years before I actually did that work. But at the very least, shut up, listen, nod, be receptive looking at the very least, because it will give space and connection for people to start talking to you. 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people really struggle with feedback, right? Especially when it's not what they were hoping to hear or not what they want to hear, right? So,
Who goes into management and is great at it? We all mess it up. Like
uh,
literally everybody.
that we could do a whole nother podcast on raising people that are ICs into management because they're the best IC and they're not even supporting them perhaps as managers, right?
I
Too much
I
of that
gotta
happening.
There was a fun story where I was talking to somebody and they were like, well, it was another executive and they were like, can't we just backfill this role and it could just be like, like an architect person who manages people. And I like looked and I did that thing that you do because we remote work. I've been remote working for like 18 years. So COVID wasn't new for me. But like, I like looked in the camera and I like went, have you, have you worked a lot with these like high level ICs? And he like look, he's I know they don't like to manage people. And I said, no, it's not that they don't like to. They won't. They don't want
Yeah.
to. They know they don't have to. They make the same amount of money and do what they love and don't deal with the work days, like all the things they
Yeah.
have to do
The
in
people
performance reviews.
problems. Yeah.
No, they don't want to and they don't have to and they won't. And I was
Hmm.
like, you're welcome to try to put that out there, but that's not only a unicorn, that's a double unicorn. So
Yeah.
have fun.
Yeah, yeah. And then what you normally end up is putting somebody in that position and they didn't really want it in the first place and it doesn't succeed, right? Anyway, but that is definitely, we could be here for another 45 minutes, I
I
know.
know, I know.
So I'm just trying to think. I normally ask a little bit about your tip as a hiring manager for people out there that are looking to, join a company or when you're looking at a resume for the first time, what you look for. What are just like a little overview of the top 3 things you would advise any candidate that's out there and looking for positions right now?
Okay, well, that's actually the easiest way to answer this is like I do look at resumes. Well, first of all, I think the pipeline starts way before a role gets created. The one thing I will say is that not to take things personal in the
Yeah.
process
Hmm.
because I've learned so many different roles before the role was even created. They already know a person, they already have a person or whatever that they were going to do, especially in like governments and a lot of these larger organizations and political ones. They already like have stuff. So don't take it personal. Like also embrace the fact that what will be for the right reasons. So like if it's the right role, it would work out. Like if it's where you're supposed to be. And I don't mean to be very like, existential about it, but I do think it's about recognizing and appreciating that the right things happen at the right time. And timing is important. But I do think one of the great things you asked was about the resumes. There are things that like flag to me like no interest, like none. And one of them is whenever I open up a resume, and the first thing I will tell you is that I'm a very visual person. And if a resume, I don't want a whole bunch of flowers and logos and things like that. I'm not saying that, but I do have to say it has to be visually appealing. So
Yeah.
investing the time and energy to have a professional resume created um, is important. And I would do that if this is important to you. Like if I did one myself before, and I spent a little bit of money to have a resume created, and it was really important. And it was visually, it captured, and that's the question I was going to go to next. It captured my essence of my personality, just subtly, professional, but a little bit fun, And so
Yeah.
I do think that that was important to make sure that your resume reflects your personality. That's probably a big one. The other thing is that if I open up a resume and it is just a word salad in the top of like Scrabble or something of all the things they think they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like that's a second one. And I'm like, okay, oh, really? You have all of these areas of expertise? Really? You sure? Um, it's also going to open you up for a lot of attack if you don't put anything on your resume you're not willing to talk through.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yep.
you just handed the person something that they could say, actually, it said you were responsible for a platform of over 70 million active users. Well, how did you get that number? Like, whatever it is. And then the last thing I'll say is that if I see a resume that very clearly seems to be aligning with the job requirements almost too well, then it probably went through AI and somebody took their resume and that job requirement and put them together and said, write a resume for this. And I was like,
Yeah.
and that's very clever, but I also don't feel like it's very genuine. I'd rather know more about you genuinely than how you think you're going to get through a system with hitting my buzzwords. So those are my
Yeah.
resume tips, I guess.
No, I think the great tips. I think that the AI thing, it's funny. I've seen a lot of that recently, like people putting through stuff through AI, and I don't have a huge issue with it. Because they're actually sitting there and reading it and going, and again, like the stuff we talked, making sure it represents them. There was somebody that wrote a summary, and because the summary didn't know if what their pronouns were, it was written as they and their, and the person didn't change it. And I know the person, so I know very well that that's not that they would write their own summary. It just didn't read right, and they clearly hadn't bothered to read through it, properly and think, well, that does that sound like me? And so they lose that
Huh.
element of getting their personality across.
That's interesting. Yeah. And it's true. Like, I don't anti-AI. Again, to one thing we said before at some point, like in one of our conversations, I do think that it can make you better and it
Yeah,
can, but don't lose who you are in the process.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's good. And I also like what you said about the interview process. Don't feel my wife has a saying, and I don't know where she got it from. It's not hers, I'm sure, but it's don't be bitter, be better. And I quite like that in terms of like when you're thinking about interviews and stuff. I know that some people really, really want that job and they really, really believe that they're the right person for it. And then when you don't get it, it's very easy to watch candidates become bitter and annoyed and frustrated. And I think the stuff that you talked about, where sort of swallow it down, think about it, for whatever reason, maybe it's and you weren't right now for it, but either way, you also wasn't right for you. Even doesn't matter how much you thought it was, it clearly wasn't, because there was a connection or something missing there. So I love what you were saying about that, because don't be bitter, be better
Yeah,
is the thing that you can learn from
that's
that
awesome.
stuff. Yeah. So what last question? I always end it on last question. And that is you going back to your early career, Amanda, and giving yourself one piece of advice. What would it be?
Do you normally end on this one?
Hmm. Yep. Every
This,
time.
damn it. All right.
You've either watched everything at 2 times the speed, or that you've like after
Yes,
about
yes,
like
yes.
15 minutes, you're like, that English guy is so
This guy.
boring.
No, I
Oh,
told you we love British accents, right? This is the thing. We love them. No, it's I think there was like I don't, in any management and leadership thing, you tend to start to lean into quotes, and you tend to start to lean into like things that are like the nuggets or the mantras that get you through and stuff like that. And so all of us have a million of them, okay? But there was one, and I should have researched it to make sure I was right about this, but there's one that's like a US president. I don't know if it was like Roosevelt, not Teddy, which I wish, because Teddy Roosevelt, awesome, like love everything about this. But there was a really good leadership thing that I wish I had learned earlier, and it was something along the lines of like, whenever there's a win, you point to your team, and when there's a loss, you point to yourself. Something along those lines. And I think our biggest problem when we're starting out in our career is that we're trying to prove something to ourselves and to others. And the sooner you stop doing that, and the sooner you start being like yourself authentically and like thoughtfully, don't be an idiot about it, but like be thoughtful about it. But like the sooner you do that, the better you are. And the sooner I like legitimately became myself, but also professionally myself. I'm not saying I was like hanging out there doing Star Wars all the time movies and like eating popcorn and like not working, which is what I do in my free time. But yeah, I think that was probably the most important thing, was just know when to speak up. Don't just speak up to show that you're in the room or on the call. Those are annoying. I call them flares. Like don't do flares. Nobody needs them. Only do whenever it's additive. But then the second part was like, I really wish I had thought about that sooner, that if there's ever a loss or a screw up, it's on you, period. You never point to your team.
Yeah. I think taking responsibility and at least looking I think I've got better as a recruiter personally over the years, because I was very early to look and say, right, what did I do wrong? Right? Maybe the candidate didn't interview right, maybe they didn't get the job, but what did I do wrong? Did I put the wrong candidate forward? Should I qualified them better? Should I have prepared them a little bit better? What were the things that I could have done that would have impacted that? Might not have changed the end result, but what could I improve? And I think if you're looking at that, what could I have done better for everything? And you'll usually find little tweaks and things that you can do, and that will make you better the next time. And that's all you're looking to do, right? Improve for the next time, improve for the next time. So I think that's a great point and a nice one to end on.
Is that what you tell yourself when you look back? Is like,
I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, I think what I did, you could always discover that stuff a little bit earlier. Right? Never hurts. My advice would just be like, buy Amazon, and like that Bitcoin that you had, you should have kept hold of. Stuff like that would have been the best advice.
That is true. That would have been the best. But that's like the problem with like the Back to the Future thing. You can't go back to give yourself like those pointers. You're not allowed to.
Yeah.
But for growth and development, I think that's also a helpful one. What you said is like, sometimes it's the little things you could have done to make things better.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be learned. Well, look, thank you so much. You've been an amazing guest. I appreciate everything you've had to share, and perhaps it certainly seems that we'll be on a stage in the future, maybe in October, maybe at ISC2 Security Congress. We'll see. We're trying to figure that out.
We'll have internet issues in that too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, just to make you feel at home, I'll keep like interrupting myself or like talking over you and stuff like that. Yeah.
It'd be great. So what's funny is that everyone who would have seen that work would have been like, wow, he's really rude. Like he
Wow, I can't believe that. He literally talked over his guests. Who does that?
It's like those context things though, right? It's like if you just knew the context, it wouldn't be as bad as you think it is. So always ask those questions, right?
There we go. I'll also throw in some echoes. I'll say what I'm saying twice every time. Really make you feel like you're back on the podcast. So
it'll be awesome. But it's been a delay, and yeah, it's probably one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had, getting to rehash my own. I haven't looked back at my stuff that I've done either in a very long time. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not at all. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you for the audience for joining us as well. Hit what they like, hit the subscribe thing, write all the comments down there.
I say that to my kids all the time when they get in the car in the morning. I'm always like, welcome to my YouTube channel, click like to subscribe. And they all go, oh.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like I have to get a good patter on with that. Like, subscribe and comment, please. You know, something cheesy.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
need
yeah.
to do. I'll
I'll
keep
get my kids
practicing
to
it.
record it for you. It'll
Yeah,
be
that's what I need. Yeah. In fact, well, I should probably get my little girl to record it, and then I can pay her some money out of the business, like, you know, and there's some tax. I think there's some good tax stuff about
You know,
that, right?
Dave Borghese or whatever, one of the comedians always has his daughter introduce him on stage. 100% adorable. You should absolutely do that. It would be the best way to do
I
it.
need to do that. I've got to say, I think my number one LinkedIn post was like I had all these comments. Here we go, and off on another subject. I was supposed to be finishing here, but there we go. So an extra bonus. This would be the bonus episode. Like, but yeah, I had my daughter, because I had a lot of candidates that were saying every job is expecting a CISSP, including the ones that want 2 years experience, right? It's impossible. Doesn't make any sense. And I was like, you just haven't started early enough. And I've got a video. It's probably on my LinkedIn. And it's my daughter. I guess she's 2 or 3 with the CISSP study guide. And she's
The red
going
and gold
through
one?
it. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
the
Sean
one that's like
Harris?
this thick.
The Sean Harris book. I have it, so I know,
Is
but
it?
yes.
I don't know if it's the Sean Harris, but it's the ISC2's actual one. And all she says is, where are the pictures? That's it. Where are the pictures?
That's adorable. That's
There we
adorable.
go.
So that's the star you should be using for like to subscribe. There you go.
I should do. Yeah, I'm going to use that. Right, I'll have to go and have a chat with her. Talking of which, she's back home from school now. I can see her in the garden, so I'm going to go and say hello to her. But again, thank you so much, and again, thank you for the audience. Season 2 of the Route to CISO podcast almost coming to a close. Only a couple more guests left. So thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.